Welcome to Meeple Inc., where the Meeples are real and they're working in your factory.
Yeah, to be clear, we are not Meeple Inc. We're Man vs. Meeple, or MVM. This right here is Meeple Inc.
All these little Meeples working in your little factory. It's a cool premise, and it leads to a very interesting, fun-looking, playful game where you're actually making board games. And they've kind of done a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek presentation here. Yeah, you've got a little calyx. I will say right off the bat that we're using the deluxe edition for this game. As we talk about it, as we give you an overview, just know you're going to be able to get all of these deluxe bits, but we wanted to show off the deluxe bits.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a little calyx. You're making little board games with boxes.
They have literal boxes. They're not real board games. They're not real board game companies.
But they could be.
I mean, my company is Gmon Games, obviously a play on Hasbro.
And
I'm just kidding.
Asmodeus Games.
Asmodeus, another not so subtle nod.
But the whole idea here is this is a worker placement game where the meeples you're placing are real, even within the world, and then you have the humans who are working alongside the meeples. So you've got literal meeples that you're placing on the board, and you'll have these standee tokens that represent specialists that you'll be placing on the board. It's an interesting kind of comical take on the idea of how a board game is made, down to the fact that you literally, to make a board game, have a board game box, and you are putting inside this box a level of components and a literal level of mechanics.
Yeah, you can have a really good box, really good mechanics, and really good components, and that is going to be worth a lot, just like it is in the board game industry.
Yeah, or not so much. You can have
Yes.
a really low-level cover. And you're actually putting these together by going to a lot of these different points, and we'll talk about how that works, but that's the whole concept of the game, is putting these boxes together, creating these board games, publishing these board games, scoring points, and then maybe if you've made your board game good enough, and good enough means according to each player's individual trophy card, you can submit it for a company award, which is going to give you some points, and then it's going to sit on one of the shelves of the calyx. And I don't want to knock this whole thing over that we built here.
We promise this isn't a dexterity game, but you actually put the board game boxes in this little shelving unit here, and like if what Ryan just did, on the third level, you're going to get a nice little trophy and a lot of points.
So, and that is primarily where your points are going to come from the game, is producing these board games. Each board game is going to be worth some points on its own. It's going to be worth even more points if you manage to submit it for an award here. But notice, there's only 9 spots, and this game plays up to 6 players. So there's definitely some tightness there in the game. And then lastly, you're going to have some objective cards. And you're going to start the game with some of these. You're going to start with your trophy card that gives you some guidance. You're going to start with an objective card that gives you some guidance in collecting some certain things. Everyone starts with a board game table.
Yeah, this is really cool.
It's a little bit of felt here, just like a real board game table. And then everyone is either going to start with a wow and pow card, which are like a positive and negative starting situation, or you're just going to choose like your actual character. Every corporation has like a special starting character that's basic and symmetric for everybody. But if you're choosing your own pow and wow cards, you're getting a little bit different of a start. You're getting one really positive effect that is game breaking, but then one negative effect that you have to get rid of if you want to, number one, fill your table full of workers, but also it restricts you and doesn't allow you to do a certain action during the game.
Yeah, Ryan just alluded to this. The table is going to seat up to 6 spaces around it, basically, and you can get specialists, maybe freelancers, put them around your board. Freelancers are going to give you maybe your unique worker placement places that you can go to.
Yeah.
Specialists are going to give you additional workers in the form of these specialist pieces that you can go out and take actions anywhere, but when you go to a certain place, they might give you a discount or let you do it for no cost.
Yeah, and you'll see all these action spaces out on the board. All of these white boxes that you see here are different action spaces, and they allow multiple players to go, or multiple players to go multiple times to take these actions in these different spots. Some of them, you just go in there, you do the action, but some of them, you have to pay to take the action, these little hard hat icons. Of course, if you do have specialists, they'll kind of let you break those rules.
Yeah.
They sometimes let you skip paying certain costs, or they make some of these actions better. But in general, a lot of these actions are going to be gathering resources, and there's a wide variety of resources you have to collect. There's some basic resources you're collecting, and again, we have the upgraded components. There's time, there's research, there's inspiration, and there's playtesting.
Yes.
Something you got.
All the things you'd need to make a good board game.
Right, and then on the other side, and then coins, and then you have the board game boxes, you have the components, and you have the mechanics. Those 3 things are the things you need to bring together to make a game, but then you're going to be spending all those resources to come to certain spots in order to get those things. Like this spot here lets you get a game box. These spots here let you get the mechanics and the components. And you can be working on a one game box at a time. So you're kind of trying to like figure out how to make the most expensive or the best board game possible, but you're limited by that little team you're creating. Each one of those cards that you set outside the outside area of your board is going to give you an extra worker in the form of a standee, and you'll have extra turns, but it's also going to give you some little skill icons. Whenever you're going to make a game, whether you're getting the box, whether you're getting the mechanics or the components, you're limited by how many of those skill symbols you have. If you only have 2 box symbols, you're only getting a level 2 box.
Right.
You got to hire smarter people if you want to get all the way up to a level 4 box.
Or at least better designers for the artwork on the front of the box. But there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing things. You can get extra specialists and people to sit around your table, or you can simply get more skills to add to some of the people that you already have. You can get those skills. You're going to go to that location, get these cards, and look at 4 of them.
Yeah.
Select one of them and add them to one of the people that you have sitting around your table already. This can give some more of those icons so that you can do a little bit more out here with a smaller team. Again, just like the board game industry.
You can also come down here and get these cards, these purple cards, which are items that give you one-time benefits, whereas these skill cards sit out and you can have one on every one of your workers or your employees. These are going to be one-time use that can give you some significant benefits when taking actions, or they can just give you some free actions that are out on the board. Again, those actions are collecting resources, getting the different things you need to bring together to eventually publish your books or your games, and then bring the games onto the shelf. So there's a multi-step process that revolves you going to multiple action spots, but like David said, there's other ways to do things. There are some spots that let you copy other actions. There's some item cards that might let you take extra actions when you're doing other actions.
Or a stronger action.
Or a stronger version. So there's a lot of ways to combo things together to get what you want, but you do have a limited number of workers. So this is kind of a game of like pushing out your workers and then having to pull them back. So every turn, you're either putting a worker out there or you're bringing a worker back. And this
all
is
your
something,
workers back.
all your workers back. And this is something that I've not seen before. There's this time token that's going to move backwards a lot around the outside edge of the board. And every time you pull workers back, based on how many you pull back, you're actually counting down back towards 0. So you're starting this timer effectively, and as you pull back with 3, you move it down 3, and the next player pulls 5, and they move it down 5, and you're passing these little clouds, which are then giving you other resources, maybe even some extra actions. So again, there's a lot of things you have to look at and kind of plan, especially in a very crowded 6-player game. You're going to have to find ways to take the actions you want.
Yeah, the way that timer moves back is a unique mechanism, and like Ryan said, there are moments where you can say, oh, I was going to achieve a thing I wanted to achieve this way, but I could just rest now, get a free action by hitting one of these spots, and take that action that way instead. Another unique mechanic, and I think this is something they added to make these research tokens a little bit more interesting, and also to add a little bit more flavor to sort of the potential off time or off turn actions. When you call back, you're able to spend some of these that you have to make predictions about what other players at the table are going to do. Now, it costs a lot of these to make a fair amount of predictions, but you could just spend one of these to make one prediction about one player. You're going to take one of the other corporation cards for all the players at the table and say, you know what? I'll bet that before the next time I rest, Ryan's definitely going to use this action space. So you've got a little deck of cards here that have all of those. You can privately say, this is what I think he's going to do.
Yeah.
And then, if and when they do that, then you can flip that card. You're going to be able to score points. Now, you can score big points if you make a lot of predictions, and they all come true before your next
Right.
action. But it is a nice little mechanic just to sort of inject a little bit more point scoring throughout the game, because a lot of the end game scoring is really what makes up the meat of the game.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can get points. That is one of the primary ways to get points during the game is by making these correct predictions. And I agree with you. It is a way to just kind of keep you looking around the table and watching other players' strategies to try to guess. I see David's path. He's doing this, and then this. But the in-game scoring is primarily going to be from the board games you've published. Any board games you publish that didn't make it onto the awards are just going to be worth points equal to their value. But these, the ones that actually made it onto this shelf, are going to be worth more points based on whether they're level 1, level 2, or level 3. And again, that's going to come back to the card you were given at the beginning of the game. Not only does this tell you what you want to have in each game to get on each shelf, it tells you how many points each one of those awards is going to be for you. And yeah, that can be modified. Some of the specialists you can have David had a starting WoW card that
Yeah.
actually made his worth more points.
Yeah, my level 2 award games got 18 points as opposed to the 14 that they would have normally gotten. So I was getting another 4 points for every
game.
one of those. And I grabbed as many of those as I possibly could. And I knew that for my game, from the very get-go, I was going to be looking at how I make my level 2 games, which, to get the awards, is just a level 2 box and level 2 components, but a level 3 in mechanics. So it kind of gave you some guidance as to how you needed to develop your team in terms of like, well, I don't really need to get a 4 box, so I'm not going to get a lot of skills that give me those higher level boxes.
Right, and these boxes are also limited. So
Yes.
in a higher player game, like there's going to be a lot of fights for some of these smaller boxes because remember, to get some of the higher level boxes, you don't just need more resources, you also need more skills spread out across. So if all the 1s and 2s are gone and you don't have 3 skill icons, now there's ways to like upgrade your resources, upgrade your boxes, but it becomes more of a challenge. But you want to get those awards because those are a significant amount of points. And then your objective cards are a significant amount of points as well. And everybody starts with one, but there is a worker space that lets you just come and get more. Each one of these is going to require you to have something at the end of the game that you did not use. And you can kind of spend those to complete these objectives, and they're worth quite a bit of points. But also, if you fail to complete them, they're negative points. So this is one of those aspects of the game you have to balance. Don't just get a ton of these if you really don't think you're going to get the resources you needed to fulfill all of them.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the objective cards is it feels somewhere in between a traditional objective card in a game and a way that you can score points for your leftover resources.
Right, because they're not worth any points.
They're not worth anything, so you need to get these objective cards. But, like Ryan said, if you get an objective card, you better be sure that you're going to have those resources. Oftentimes, when I picked up my extra objective card, I simply had, at that moment, a surplus, and I just assigned them to that card then and dealt with...
Don't spend them. Don't be tempted to
No,
spend
I was
them.
not. I was not going to spend them. I just went out and got more of the things I needed to get the things done. Not to mention the fact that you can always get those things, but like I said earlier, you might be able to just take an action, and when you cover up one of these things, get a little resource
There's
here, a little
always
resource
ways.
there, and you can kind of get things done that
A lot
way.
of these freelancer cards just give you benefits. A lot of the specialists might give you extra benefits for going to specific locations. So there's a lot of ways you can get resources other than just going to the spots to take them. But you're doing this, repeating this until the game ends. And like I said, it only ends when this timer track goes all the way down to 0. Whoever ends it's going to get 5 points. But again, you're getting all of those benefits as you go. So there is some strategy to go like pulling back early. But the more specialists you have, the longer you can extend your turns, the more actions you can take in between those rests. So again, there's a balance there. But as soon as that timer track hits 0, the game is over. Everybody else gets one more turn, but your game is done. So you better make sure that your final rest, you're pretty well prepared to end the game.
Yeah, there are a few places to score your points. You're going to get those objectives. You're going to publish these games, and that's about it. But the way you get there can feel quite a bit different. I didn't have many extra workers. I had my base level workers and 1 specialist. Ryan actually spent more time getting a few more specialists, but like he said, that really changed the cycles with how frequently we were recalling. So Ryan was getting quite a bit more of those bonuses as the timer went down than I was.
I was moving like 6 or 7 spaces down every time I rested because I was pulling back 6 or 7 workers. However, like David said earlier, if you're like right next to one that's maybe a bonus
You might
action,
just recall with 1 person.
yeah, plus you're getting to make more of those predictions. So there are a lot of different paths you could take, a lot of different strategies you can take. And again, it's just like a fun, playful take on how board games are made.
Yeah, for sure.
Using this fun little board. I really do appreciate how much fun all these meeples are having on the board.
Yeah, it is a board game that celebrates board games for sure. If you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below or check out their campaign page. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.